Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz. And today we're getting an update on Guanajuato Silver. Guanajuato Silver is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker GSVR and on the OTCQX under the ticker GSVRF. I'm joined today with the chairman and CEO of Guanajuato Silver, James Anderson. And James, it's great to get you back on the call here. It's actually been since February since we've had an update here at the KE Report. We do try to touch base periodically in between there, but I thought it was a good time to bring you on before you get to your Q1 numbers because we haven't even looked back at 2025 yet in Q4, and you put out some big news to the marketplace, which is really the reason I reached out about the early repayment on a partial portion of your gold loan to Ocean Partners, and we will definitely get into that. But just as a starting point, James, when we look back at last year, I was reading over the news you put out on April the 29th, and it was talking about the average price of gold and the average price of silver. Silver at that time in Q4 was 55.54, and the average realized price for gold was just below 4,200. When you think about that being a record price for gold and silver at that time and how far metals prices have moved since then, I guess let's look back at last year, but also put it in the context of just how much things are going to grow in Q1 and moving forward with these higher metals prices.
Well, Shad, there's a lot there. First of all, thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure. I'm surprised that it's been since February as well, but always love being here and chit-chatting with you. I guess as you describe all that, one of the things that comes to my mind, we've built Guanajuato Silver for this time in the marketplace, right? We've taken older mines that were underinvested in for a long time, smaller underground silver and gold mines, and silver and gold only, really, and put them back into production. And during the downturn, and when I talk about the downturn, I mean when silver was stuck at plus or minus $30 for a number of years, that was really, really hard. But with the current prices, you said $55 and $4,200 in the fourth quarter. Now, certainly, the prices that we see on the screen today, I mean, that this is the time for a company like Guanajuato Silver to shine. And I think we're showing that in a lot of different facets.
Well, just digging into a few metrics in there that I think is worth highlighting, your mine operating income really last year, if we look at Q4 and just as a year, had a nice jump. Just in Q4, it was up 375% over the prior quarter. Your revenue increased by 40%. You saw an increase in production. The grades were higher, 37 and 15% higher for both the silver and the gold. And again, that was still when you're building out of what I consider a large turnaround the company has been under the process of for, let's say, the last 12 to 18 months, optimizing the mines. You didn't even have Bolanitos in the mix until just the end of last year when you were making the acquisition. Some of that bled over into this year till it was all completed. So from the standpoint of now, you have 5 mines running in Mexico, a lot of silver and gold, very little base metals, higher price environment. What does that enable you to do as a company? How can you flex a little bit here?
So the one metric that you mentioned in there, mine operating income, mine operating profit, that's really important because I think if people want to compare us to other similar sized Mexican mining companies, Mexican silver and gold mining companies, really the growth of that and the quantum of that I think is an important element because what we're doing and what we continue to do in terms of expanding our business, developing our mines, developing our business further, we're spending a lot of the mine operating income back in the mines. We've announced a 75,000-meter drill program this year. That's infill drilling, extensional drilling, and real exploration drilling at all of our operations. But it's 75 kilometers of drilling this year. So that's obviously a big price tag, and that's we're spending the money that we earn on our mines, back into the mines. Likewise, 16,000 meters of underground development work, so underground tunneling, both CapEx and OpEx, but a lot of that fresh CapEx tunneling towards areas of the mine, towards different veins, towards different vein structures that will be productive either later this year or in the years in the future. So these are all investments that we're making in the mines. But all of those numbers, the 40% jump in revenue, well, we will have similar numbers and similar, I don't know, check marks for investors, I think, within just the next couple of weeks as we announce our first quarter numbers.
Well, we'll get you back on the horn when those come out and we'll dive into them together. And I'm going to put a pin in the exploration and development work for just a moment because I don't want to shortchange the news you put out on the 14th, which is today as we speak. The news is you had the early partial repayment of the gold loan with Ocean Partners. I think you've got 46% of this loan paid now, taking advantage of kind of the delta and where the metals prices were and where they are today. So unpack this for people and why it's a big deal.
Yeah, well, we borrowed some money from Ocean Partners. Ocean Partners is the outfit that we sell almost all of our concentrates to in Mexico. It's a British firm. They've been with us all the way through. They are large shareholders in the company, but we borrowed some money from them a few years ago. And again, during the downturn, it was very difficult to, find an opportune time to repay them. And today we announced a significant early payment. And when we do an early payment with Ocean Partners on our gold loan, Shad, they give us a discount to, the spot price in gold. And we were able to use the sharp downturn in the gold market of just the last couple of weeks to be able to price some of the gold, get a further discount from that. So we paid, in essence, what is a year's worth of our gold loan. And in total, you're quite right, we've paid down 46% of the balance of this. We have a total of 3,814 ounces of gold left to pay on the gold loan, but we do not have to make a payment until May of 2027. And the total quantum mark to market with gold's closing price today is only $17.7 million. So I think if you look at it and from any way, the company is after this payment in vastly better financial shape than it has been in a long, long time.
Yeah, it's a huge slug to take out of the loan repayment early. You get those discounts, as you mentioned. So accelerating it, you're using the metals price volatility to your advantage in a way. And then you don't really have to start paying it again for a while, but you could. You have the option. You have optionality now, and improves the balance sheet. Maybe just one more comment about it as well, as far as let's just say that gold price goes to $6,000 or gold price goes to $4,000, would you approach the repayments loan any differently in a upward scenario or a downward scenario?
I think, over time, the short answer is yes. You and I have been doing this for a long time, Shad, and I think you and I are both bullish on the precious metals for a number of different reasons. I continue to be bullish on gold. The only caveat being that in my observations over 40 years of watching the precious metal markets, are they volatile? Yes, always. And as the price of gold moves higher, will there be a day, a week, a month, 4 months where there's a backdraft and the price of gold comes down sharply? Generally speaking, that happens. And from whatever, if we run up to 6,000, well, maybe that we have a sharp correction. So we're in a position to be able to take advantage of those swings in the marketplace to advantageously extinguish this loan. We've just shown that we are ready, willing, and able to do that. On top of paying off, this amount of our loan, we're also spending money on the exploration drilling that I mentioned. We're also spending money on the development work, 16 kilometers worth that I mentioned. We're also paying down old AP that, was acquired or that, the company took on accounts payable when money was a little tight. So, our balance sheet looks a whole heck of a lot better than that. And as we speak, we've got about $25 million US dollars in our treasury. So, we've got lots of flexibility. We can do many, many different things in terms of expanding our current business, looking at other outside of opportunities, repaying debt, and we will make those decisions opportunistically as those situations present themselves for us in the future.
Well, let's dig into some of that development and exploration work that you're investing in because it's going to continue to propel the company forward in growth. Let's maybe start it with Bolanitos. This was a huge acquisition for the company. I'd say transformative. It's now your biggest mine out of the five, but it's also adjacent to San Ignacio. And so between these two, you said they were separated by a 7-iron that you could chip a golf ball between the two. They really have been in the past in competing companies, but now you're bringing the two families together and you're working on the synergies there. What can you say about the larger complex between Bolanitos and San Ignacio?
So, yeah, a couple of different things. So, the integration process continues. Of course, when we first acquired it, we thought that that would be easy. Of course, things are never as easy as you quite think. There's a couple of different challenges for us, but let me talk about some of the opportunities. Some of the best exploration targets that we've got on both sides of the border really have not been able to be accessed or drilled from either side of the border because they were different companies' properties. So we don't have that issue anymore, and we are having some drilling success right now, both at San Ignacio and Bolanitos, with drill holes that have been drilled from the opposite side of the border, if you will. So that sort of opportunity, I'll call it low-hanging fruit. I mean those are obvious targets that are now easy to access to make. So we're having some success there, and I expect that to continue. Some of the other challenges, they're not really mining challenges or I don't know, integration challenges that you might think of, but just things like trying to operate both operations within one subsidiary. And you'd think that that would be easy, but there's tax issues, there's employment issues back and forth. So we're just working out those types of issues. But in the months ahead, I'm very confident that we'll be able to work our way through that so that really the whole thing will be able to be operated more smoothly under one of Guanajuato Silver's subsidiaries.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch it, and I don't think it's ever an easy process to bring together two teams, two subsidiaries, two different areas. But there is a lot of upside, blue sky, as you mentioned, between the areas that maybe previously were never going to be accessed, and now they can be through exploration and development. Well, you're doing 16,000 meters of development work, so this is across all the mines. Now, in that process, just to help people listening in, you may still have some production that comes out of that, but it's not going to be at nameplate. It's not going to be the normal grade you'd expect because you're basically tunneling over to areas to access higher grade areas. So maybe talk about how that'll factor into this year's production profile, but what's the prize at the end of the development?
Well, yeah, development ore is always an element of production within an underground operation. Generally speaking, development ore is of lower grade. So you've done the development work, you've done the tunneling, and then you have to make a decision, sometimes in real time, but sometimes you know ahead of time what kind of grades you're going to be encountering. And then it's an arithmetic process. Okay, so now that you've spent that money, now that you have that sunk capital into the tunneling, into the development work, okay, does that development ore make grade to process it and make some silver and gold from it? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and that's just a part of our operations. But we've got accelerated development work at Cubo, Bolanitos, San Ignacio, and later in the year we will have accelerated development work at Valenciana as well. So again, really taking this opportunity, because this is a huge opportunity for Guanajuato Silver to make all of these mines, again, more efficient, more profitable, and more like 21st century operations.
Well, and in addition to all this development work and a lot of the sunk costs that you're putting in as far as the equipment that you've invested in the last year or two, you're also spending a lot on exploration. This is the biggest exploration program I think I've ever seen you do, and it's a big exploration program for any company. I don't care what their size is, 75,000 meters. So we teased this last time that you were turning some drills at Topia, but you still have in the queue drilling at El Cubo, at El Horcon, which is not a producing mine, but it's one you've pulled some development ore before. Which one would you like to focus on as far as where the exploration work is getting focused right now?
Well, of that 75,000 meters, we're drilling at all of the operations right now. We have just finished quite a large surface drilling program at Topia, and that's the first surface drilling program that's happened there for a long time. Currently, we've got 7 drills turning. There's one, two, three, four, 5 of those are our own drills, and 2 of them are contract drillers' drills. We're going to have one more contractor join the operation soon, and another drill that we've purchased will be operating soon as well. So, of the 75,000 meters, I don't think we're quite at the level of drilling on a daily and weekly basis that we need. to execute that by the end of the year, but we're pretty darn close. And with the extra drill rigs arriving within the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to be at that run rate.
Maybe you spend a little time and unpack the drilling at El Horcon because this is an area that it's a historic mine. It's produced in the past. You've pulled some ore from it and processed from there, but you were pretty excited about, or the team and the exploration team when you were there on site was pretty excited about the exploration upside at El Horcon.
Yeah, I continue to be excited about it. I'm an explorationist at heart, as you know, and it is a really cool exploration project. So for your listeners that don't know exactly where it is, it's pretty close to Guanajuato. It's about 85 kilometers in a straight line to the northwest of Bolanitos, let's say. It's just across the state boundary. So it's just into Jalisco. It's north of the city of Leon. I've been there on a number of different occasions. It was a past producer and a pretty important past producer 90 years ago or so. As you mentioned, Shad, we have processed some material, some old material that didn't make grade 100 years ago in our processing facilities in Guanajuato. So yes, the material floats and we can process it. There's about 12 on echelon veins in this system. It's a direct extension, albeit 85 kilometers away, of Veta Madre. So do I think that the Veta Madre structure is still in play that far away? I think I do. So, that makes it very interesting, very compelling. We took about 1,100 channel samples last year underground and over, Mexican underground mining widths of, let's say, half a meter to 3 meters, really good grades, and especially really good gold grades. This will be a gold mine, if we can establish a big enough resource. If people look on our website, you can see the historical resource that Great Panther put together with just 28 drill holes about a dozen years ago. So, it does have some scope. The other thing that I really like about it, not only are there these on echelon veins, but there are cross-cutting structures that are also mineralized and flat-lying structures. And when underground, you can take samples on these flat-lying manto-like structures that again are really high grade in gold, sometimes 15, 20, or 25 grams of gold per ton. So as we drill it, which God willing we'll be doing in July, we're just waiting for a couple of other permits to come in with that, Shed. But as we drill it, there's all kinds of different opportunities to have multiple intercepts in the drill holes. So whenever I've seen situations like that in the past, you can put tonnage together pretty quick if you're cutting through numerous structures per drill hole.
Yeah, it's a good use of drilling money to hit multiple structures at once and have multiple intercepts. It's always fun to get those back. So we'll keep posted for some of these exploration results when they get released to the market. And then just a quick follow-up. A couple people have asked questions, James, about Pinguico, the very first project you ever had in the stable. Is that going to get any drilling? And then also as part of your acquisition of Bolanitos, the Cebada Mine, which is another historic mine also on trend there, is that going to get any drilling?
So great questions. We have a high class problem. We have so many different places to be able to expand and develop and explore. Pinguico, remains forefront in our thinking. We simply have more opportunities in different areas of the different mines right now. We would hope to be able to get back underground doing development work towards that underground stockpile within months, not years. As you know, we continue to expand the company by buying additional mines, and those elements continue to change our focus somewhat. Cebada, you mentioned, and again, for your listeners, for those folks who don't know exactly where that is, it's the direct extension of Valenciana to the north. So rather than us having arguably the most productive 4 kilometers of Veta Madre right in Guanajuato, we now have arguably the most productive 8 kilometers. So Cebada was another past producing mine. This came along with the Bolanitos transaction. It really needs some additional underground work and some underground drilling before we can make very much of it. We don't have that, in our plan for 2026, Shad. I expect it will become an important focus for us, arguably next year, because there's too many obvious targets that we can drill from underground. we've got to do some work. And again, we're, perhaps distracted doing work on a number of other different things, but it's certainly a really important, interesting opportunity for us to be able to try and expand Valenciana into the Valenciana Cebada corridor.
Yeah, just some interesting questions coming on that. And you've got more than you can say grace over right now with all the different mines, and you're keeping the main thing the main thing. You're drilling the mines that are operating and looking for areas that can come into the mine plan sooner. That is the main priority. But just to highlight that there are three other non-producing assets that still have a lot of potential in the company stable, and you're always on the hunt for looking for other acquisitions. So I guess just as we wrap up, James, anything else you want to highlight as far as either the value proposition of the company or any key news on tap you want people looking out for?
I just, I'd like people to be able to understand and appreciate that, with the abundance of riches that we have with $80 silver and $4,700 gold, a lot of people want to know, well, so where are you spending the money? Are you spending it on development work, exploration and development drilling, extensional drilling? Are you, bettering the fleet? Are you doing projects to make the processing facilities better? Expand tailings capacity? Are you paying down debt? Are you adding money to your balance sheet? And what I would like to say is all of the above.
That's a good checklist to say yes to. So I think we'll wrap it up there for today. That's a lot going on with Guanajuato Silver on the production side, on the development side, on the exploration side, and even using savvy market levers in the metals prices themselves to pay down the loan a little bit quicker than expected. So a lot going on with G Silver. If you're interested in following along with the company, definitely click on the link in the show notes. It takes you right over to their news section. You can sign up for updates that hit your email inbox or just follow along with the news as it drops. In a couple weeks, James, we'll get back together and we'll dive into Q1 together. But nice to get this update on Guanajuato Silver and looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks again, Chad. I look forward to it as well.